Who created God?
Terrified and ignorant pre-science savages in desperate need of a celestial security blanket. That's who. Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. Today we've got another argument from design. When the frick are they going to give this one up? Seriously.
After much thinking and rigorous discussion, some atheists have advanced what they believe to be an invincible argument. That is, that if the universe's complexity requires a designer, then surely God, who is more complex, must need something that designed him too.
This is just a bit of a straw man and cherry picking. Oh, sure, it's a pretty valid argument put forth by quite a few, but it's also incomplete. There are many variations on this argument, and many of those can easily intertwine with each other. For example, there is the problem of infinite regress, of asking what created God. There is the argument of stopping that chain of infinite regress before getting to God. In other words, the universe being its own cause and effect. And others. Singling out this one argument does miss the point just a little.
This argument is, however, flawed on several levels. No, I didn't mean that kind of flawed. I meant this kind of flawed.
Lamest joke ever. And I should know.
Let's take each flaw one by one. Firstly, the assumption of this argument is wrong. The universe does not require a designer simply because it is complex.
And yet, irreducible complexity is inevitably used as an argument for intelligent design. You can't suddenly refuse to defend your own argument when it's been turned back around on you. If explaining complexity is going to be any part of the argument, your God doesn't get to be one big ol' exception.
The main reason the universe requires a designer is because before the Big Bang, the universe didn't exist. There was nothing. Zero. Zilch, nada.
A simple Google search reveals this to be a steaming pantload of bullshit. If there was nothing before the Big Bang, why do we keep finding stuff from the universe's prequel? If your entire argument hinges on this point, we can pretty much stop right here. But where's the fun in that?
Something came from nothing. And this process requires a designer. This process cannot happen by chance.
This is a false dichotomy that theists love so very much. Design or chance. No other possibility, one or the other. But it's not so. If a ball were to roll down a hill an infinite number of times, and each time the ball rolled at exactly the same speed, the obstacles on the hill were exactly the same, the forces acting upon the ball, such as gravity or the wind, were always the same, and so on, the end result, where the ball landed, and when, which side of it was up or down, whether it became stained with dirt, etc., would always be the same as well. The world only seems chaotic because there are too many factors for us to process. What appears random is nothing of the kind. The universe is, in fact, a very ordered, regular place. It wouldn't be unreasonable to hypothesize that everything that has happened and everything that will happen, including our own actions, is predetermined because of the way the universe works, unguided by anything but the mindless laws of the universe. If one were to look up chaos theory, it becomes clear that, despite this video being a very basic layman's version of it, determinism that only appears to be chance has been very well studied, and it becomes clear that design and chance are not the only possible forces that shape the universe.
The only possible origin of anything is design, not chance.
That's the false dichotomy inherent in the creationist view, that those are the only two possibilities. This is, by now, obviously not so.
Think of it like this. Random chance cannot create a car from parts that do not yet exist. Those parts have to exist first. You need an engine and an exhaust, tires and a body all separately before you put them together.
Ugh, the car analogy. Interestingly, the universe isn't a car. It's not even really like a car. For one thing, unlike a car, the universe does not have a specific purpose or utility. The universe is clearly not driven. It proceeds on its own, unguided. The early example of the rolling ball demonstrates this. There's no evidence of manufacture. To even make that determination, there would need to be multiple universes to study for comparison, and we've only begun to be able to measure whether any are there or not. Without that, we are, at best, guessing, or hoping, wishing. If the universe is like anything, it's like that ball succumbing to gravity. There's matter, energy, and unguided but consistent forces all happening in concert with each other. Not random, yet no design necessary.
Chance cannot choose from options that don't exist.
How can anyone or anything choose from options that don't exist? If the option isn't there, it cannot be a result, chosen or not. If you're going to claim that a designer, a god, can bypass this very basic concept, you're guilty of special pleading.
As God has indeed always existed, God therefore doesn't need a designer.
Oh, well, that settles that then. Except for the part where proof of the existence of God has been bypassed entirely. Minor detail.
Is this claim that God has always existed and is, in other words, eternal, far-fetched? Does it make sense that anything can be eternal? When we examine this, we find that the existence of an eternal creator is not only necessary, but it is in actual fact the only solution.
And now we're going to be walked through a long-ass argument of infinite regress until we get to...
the Big Bang. An explosion in which everything came from nothing. And what preceded the Big Bang? Let's call it the Big Cause. Well, what was before the Big Cause? Well, let's call it the Bigger Cause. And what caused the Bigger Cause? Ultimately, this chain of cause and effect cannot extend into the past infinitely. The reason for this is simple. Everything that begins to exist must have a cause, because something cannot create itself.
Except God, allegedly. Somehow his, her, its, or their existence doesn't require a cause. Big ol' exception. Somehow. Apparently. For that matter, we have no evidence that nothing can create itself. We haven't seen anything create itself, but then we hadn't seen living cells or subatomic particles for a very long time. Hadn't until quite recently, in fact. To claim that nothing can create itself seems logical, with what we know now. Furthermore, there's no reason to think that the universe isn't on some sort of infinite loop. Time and space are not absolutes as they appear at first glance, and the notion that the universe could be on some sort of infinite loop cannot be immediately discarded. The idea of an oscillatory universe, one which bangs and crunches, expanding and contracting endlessly, is one of the many hypothesized possibilities. The idea of a creator may at first seem logical or comforting, but it's not the only possibility.
And thus we are left with three options. Firstly, believe in an uncaused cause. Secondly, believe that nothing, including yourself, has a beginning. And finally, disbelieve in everything that exists. I know which one makes the most sense to me.
Well, it doesn't matter which one makes sense. What matters is which one you can prove. And of course, these are based on the assumptions that have already been shown to be faulty and or incomplete.
The only question that remains, therefore, is whether this uncaused cause is conscious or not. However, if you really want to know if the uncaused cause is conscious, there is a really easy way to find out. All you need to do is lift up your hands and pray. Ask the uncaused cause to communicate with you.
So after all this, what it really comes down to is talking to yourself. That's how you prove God is real. Start babbling to something you cannot see, hear, or feel, or smell, hopefully, and see if it babbles back. Sorry, but if I'm going to believe I'm talking to something, it's gotta answer outside my own head. Arguments like these seem to be theist bread and butter. But I have to wonder who they are trying to convince. Without evidence to back up their clearly biased logic, I think it's safe to say that they are quite literally preaching to the choir. If they hope to actually convert anybody who can actually think critically or logically, they're going about it all wrong. though it seems they have no other options, or they'd have employed them already. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think.
And remember, if it can't be in your hand, it's all in your head.